The first thing we're going to dive into, of course, is the student loan cancellation. I do have a little video of Biden's speech. I'm not going to play the whole thing. It was 21 minutes. I'll try to let it run for like 2 or 3 minutes, see where it lands. I have it at about when he's actually talking about some of the specifics. Basically, if you don't want to listen to the first 8 or 9 minutes of it, the beginning is Biden talking about his experience becoming, the first person in his family to go to college and get a degree. Similar, frankly, to what I've had to experience, being the first person in my family to go to college or get a degree from college, I should say. And then it's more about the justifications, which I will dive into after. And this is like more about the specifics of his plan. And I'll let it run. And he kind of rambles for quite a bit after. So I might just cut it off at some point and just take it from him. But it's important, I think, to hear it from the man himself who plans on doing this. So without hopeful interruptions from advertisements, let's see what we got.
It's time for the payments to resume. Second, my campaign for president, I made a commitment. That would provide student debt relief. And I'm honoring that commitment today. Using the authority Congress granted the Department of Education, we will forgive $10,000 in outstanding federal student loans. In addition, students who come from low-income families, which allowed them to qualify to receive a Pell Grant, will have their debt reduced $20,000. Both of these targeted actions are for families who need it the most. Working and middle-class people hit especially hard during the pandemic, making under $125,000 a year. If you make more than that, you don't qualify. No high-income individual or high-income household on top of the 5%, in the top 5% of incomes, by the way, will benefit from this action, period. In fact, about 90% of the eligible beneficiaries make under $75,000 as family. Here's what that means. If you make under $125,000, you get $10,000 knocked off your student debt. If you make under $125,000 a year and you received a Pell Grant, you'll get an additional $10,000 knocked off that total, for a total of $20,000 relief. 95% of the borrowers can benefit from these actions. That's 43 million people. Of the 43 million, over 60% are Pell Grant recipients. That's 27 million people who will get $20,000 in debt relief. Nearly 45% can have their student debt fully canceled. That's 20 million people who can start getting on with their lives.
I think that's a good point to transition back over here, because those are like the highlights from the initial reading of this, I guess, executive order that they're going to be passing. And reiterate, because I know that was a little quiet, $10,000 for federal loans. Again, the government doesn't have the authority to cancel private loans, but the government, and specifically the president, has the unilateral authority to cancel student loan debt that is federally held. Thus, which is the majority of student loan debt, which is nearing $2 trillion before this. When the president has that authority, they can, of course, cancel all of it, as we will talk about later. But they also can change this stuff so that, like he's saying, the Pell Grant, which is a specific grant to help lower income folks, that also doubles the amount of forgiveness that they're going to give. So that is, I think, is an ideal way to reduce the amount of people with outstanding student loan debt without the full loaf. And again, I will give my full opinion on that in a second. But in general, 10,000 across the board is significantly better than I had expected for a very long time. I have to say that I did not fully expect to see student loan cancellation under the Biden administration. I thought it might have fallen out of favor. I might have thought it just might have been the campaign promise that they didn't take seriously. I mean, I have some Twitter followers that love, and I love you. You send me stuff every time that there's some movement on this issue. That's great. It's just that it historically has been so minute and means tested and specific that it's not worth even mentioning until now, where you have literally 20 million people that will have their student loan debt fully eradicated. You will have 20 million people that will have no debt from going to school, which is extremely, extremely positive, as I personally don't believe that you should be subjugated to a lesser education because of the amount of money that you have, or the lack of money that you have, I should say, realistically. But and that's another bit to dive into as well. But the one thing that I want to point out too, that we didn't get from the Biden video here, is the cap on the repayment, like the forced repayment, basically. So functionally, they're coming up with a new repayment plan that will focus on income-based repayment. Currently, the money that you could spend on your repayment is 10% of your discretional income. So discretionary income is income that is after essentials. It is after, obviously after tax. It's after housing, food, like the specifics that you basically need to live, and discretionary spending being that like you could just have after all of that. Currently, it's 10%. Now they're knocking it down to 5%, which is really good. And then going from that, once you get to the point where it's knocked down to that 5% of your discretionary monthly income, if you pay for over 20 years consistently, and again, that sounds like a long time, and it sure the hell is, but if you pay on time that minimum at least over 20 years, which a lot of people will end up paying the whole thing off before 20 years or whatever it might be. But if that is the case, you will end up getting the remainder of your balance canceled, which is huge. If you have, there's other different minor specifics that would target specific areas. So like they have public workers that will get their cancellation sooner. They have people that will start to qualify for cancellation once that they join the military and they have certain time spent there. It is all good stuff that is building up. I think that and I'm looking over at my phone because I am checking that everything is still working. My chat on my computer is not functionally working, so I'm going to pull up another window just so I can see everybody. But just bear with me there. The overall end point of this is really beneficial, I believe, to the potential. The potential upside is giant. I'll just say that. And that's to, there is multiple ways to look at this. The upside from the American people, and then there's the upside. Oh, wait, so I can still see Jordan chatting, so we should hopefully be okay. I don't need to have dual screen of myself. But I don't know what's going on, but I'm glad you guys are here to witness it. But the let's start from the individual level. There's the individual and then there's the systematic, right? On the individual level, you as a person, and I can use myself as an example, technically speaking, due to some circumstances that I started to doubt that we would get student loan cancellation. I had help. It is not a White Claw. It is not a White Claw. This is a Bang Energy. Now, it might be a Rainbow Unicorn Bang Energy, but it is not a White Claw. Do not drink and stream, friends. But due to circumstances that I had the luck of, someone helped, a family member helped me pay off my student loan debt. Now I just pay them. So there's a good and bad for that. So the decrease in interest payments, of course, being one of them. But frankly, it's kind of sucks because now I'm like, oh, well, I could have just waited a couple months and I wouldn't have to pay, because I'll just be honest, it was more than $10,000 and I'm ending up repaying here. But that's okay, because maybe my grad student loans will get helped here. But let's just take myself for an example. Once my ability to kind of dissect my life from the student loan that I had, basically saying like, okay, I don't have to worry about the interest growing astronomically. I can kind of pay this off over, 4 or 5 years, and I can also work to build wealth, which is the whole point of this, is to build the American dream here. Because that's always been the point. That's the point of this show. That's the point of my former campaigns. That's the point of supporting progressive candidates, is to build upon what the potential of what the original idea of what the American dream was. So for me, I am now sitting in my own house because of the ability to save money and build a plan moving forward that wasn't tied to specifically $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in student loan debt that I had to pay off before I could get money for a home. And now dissect that from myself and say, okay, the individual that maybe has a significant other, they just got married. Maybe now that couple might be able to form a family, have children, because they can afford to have them, because they can afford to put a roof over their head, because they can afford to pay for quality food instead of paying $200, $300, $400, $500 every single month to the student loan processor while accruing interest at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9% interest. That is how you start to claw back at millennials, Gen Z, getting wealth and building it the way that our parents and our grandparents were able to do it previously, before this massive amount of student debt was thrown upon us. You can buy a house, you can buy a car, you can actually attain some level of wealth, some level of mobility, that instead of being grasped down and pulled down by the claws of student loan debt, you have the potential to grow out of that. Now, the systematic impact now, and this is opinion, so you could take it with a grain of salt, but this is my opinion, and there are plenty of potential ways that you can look at it otherwise. But I see this, and I said this when Biden was elected, and Jordan, I will address that question in a second. When Biden was elected, I had said to people, if he canceled all student loan debt, he would immediately become one of the greatest presidents ever elected. And why did I believe that? Not because it would personally benefit me, although at the time it would have. It would be he would become one of the greatest presidents because of the economic boom that you would see from young people I'll say 50 and under, the people most impacted, and again, there are people that are older than 50 with student loan debt, by the way, but the majority of people in that millennial generation, young Gen Xers, older Gen Z, that have student loan debt will have the ability to do what I just said on the individual level. And if you have generations, you have frankly, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, as Biden talked about, 20 million people having their whole balance wiped out, and another 23 million having it significantly reduced. That is talking about a economic boom that I could only imagine would be comparable to the 1950s with New Deal spending and discretionary spending by the government that spent money to create housing opportunities for veterans. That, you guys all know where I'm coming from with the 1950s and the investments in communities, etc. Right? So, but it's a different type of investment, because instead of saying like, here's a bunch of cash, handing it to them, or here's a house, handing it to them, you are just lifting the chains basically off of people and freeing them to say, I'm going to go chase this dream. I'm going to go chase that opportunity to own this, or I'm going to go chase that opportunity to go start a business. Because I don't have this debt, I can go get a loan to start a business. I can go get a loan. I can go get a mortgage, because now my credit score isn't getting destroyed by having student loan debt. So that is the way that I look at it, is an economic stimulus. This is not even the full thing. Like I said, if he did all of the student loan debt, you would see an economic boom I think that we would never have seen before. This is big, and I think it will benefit. And again, at the end of his speech, he talks about there's clawbacks, there's way to get money back, there's way to pay for it, there's this, there's that, and the other thing. That's not my concern. My concern is making sure that people have the opportunity to go and chase the American dream the way that every other generation before us has. And that is the key. Do I think that college admissions will increase? I don't know if the admissions will increase. I have a hope that they will. I have a hope that now that this has been done, you will see the avenues of lessening the burden for education. And that means for college, and that means for trade schools. Because here's the thing. If you limit education just to college, you're missing a group of people. If you limit to say all right, we're going to wipe the student loan debt and we're just going to let it go back to normal, the reality is that the amount of student loan debt that's actually being canceled and is nominally not that high if you let the cycle continue. Because every year, millions of students take out those loans. I mean, as someone that's going to grad school, I had to take out a loan last week. So each year you're looking at just millions and millions of people adding on to it, plus the increasing rise in cost. So you can look at it as in, yeah, they might have an increased admissions rate, but this will be beneficial in isolation. But a smart, systematic approach to this, and again, this is why I'm talking about my ideal, which I can kind of pivot into here. My ideal would be, instead of 10,000, wipe it clean. Wipe 50,000 clean. Because 10,000 is what Biden ran on. 50,000 is what Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren supported. All of it is what Bernie Sanders supported. But the most, quote, radical of people that end up in this conversation, let's take Bernie for this example, also advocate for making some form of education free. In fact, Bernie's the only one that I've seen that's advocated for making trade schools free. other than, of course, myself. But that doesn't count. I don't count. The idea of, okay, cancel the student loan debt. Now we're gonna reset the system. He even admits in this. Biden admits in his speech the system is broken. They wouldn't do this if they didn't think so. So if you say system's broken, we're gonna cancel 10,000 and let it go, that's stupid. My solution, and this is a solution, and it's a bare minimum solution if you ask me. It's one of the moving pieces. You have at least, we all know about community colleges, right? So back in the day, I'll just say collectively, my parents, when they were my age, they didn't go to these schools, but in theory, that generation, older Gen Xers and baby boomers, had the opportunity to go to free community colleges. Free. Tuition free. Not 5,000, not 10,000, not 15,000. Free. That's entry level number one. Free community colleges. Bernie Sanders has a proposal for that. The next level, actually something that I ran on for state rep, and I think that someone should steal this. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Anybody that's running for office listening, you could have this. Every single state in the union should have at least one, tuition-free public school. At least one. If we really want to get down to the heart of this, all public universities should be free, but that's an ideal. I think there should be at least one free state school in every single state, functionally creating a public option for education, the same way that many people, Biden included, support a public option for healthcare. It's been done. It's been done on the community college level. It's been done in other countries where they make universities free or at least cheap. And the idea and the functionality of why we would want a public option on education in the university level is because if you create one opportunity for free here and the private school has to compete, and again, there are flaws to this system. We can obviously discuss those. The private school to compete with getting enough admissions would have to lower the costs, or would at least have to provide more financial aid, which financial aid in this country is a joke, but at least provide more financial aid to students, not just athletes, to students to come to the school. That would functionally lower the cost, which at least would lower the overall public student loan crisis that we have in tandem with cancellation of student loan debt. Because I believe wipe it all out and reset the system. That's me who has paid most of my student loan debt off. That's me who's had to take another loan to go to school again. But I know, and we all functionally know, that this is going to be beneficial for the economy, and it's going to be beneficial to the individuals. And frankly, I think it will be beneficial to the Democrats in the midterm elections, which is why I think he's doing it now. I wish that he did more. I wish that he did it sooner. I wish that it could have been the whole thing. But woulda, coulda, shoulda at this point, I will take this. I will run this into the end zone, and I'm happy that Biden has taken action on this because it is important. It is important. Yes, Eric, you're right too. You said yours paid off. Cancel it all. Cancel it all. They need to fix the overall system. The system is broken. Biden said it himself. It is exactly a problem. Will this be the end of community college? No, it won't be the end of community college. That's for sure. That's not the end of community college, because community college is still an affordable option. Now, if you have my way of things, you would still be able to provide for, in my ideal, you have multiple options for free. Like you wouldn't just, let's just take Pennsylvania for an example. If you took one, again, if the idea is to have one in every state, if you took, let's just say, Bloomsburg and made it that's the public university, the free one, that is really far for some people. And some people still wouldn't be able to afford to live like on campus. So that's the ability of creating an opportunity for community colleges. And community colleges might be able to specify in more specific things. Let's just take Bucks County Community College for an example, where it could be, okay, we're gonna focus on creating opportunities within the pharmaceutical industry, which, like, whatever we all think of that, right? We're in such a close proximity to a lot of these pharmaceutical companies that's the kind of the avenue that we're going to create. And that's the way that you sell these colleges at that point, where they're specified for what they do. That is personally, that's, I think, a much more opportunistic way to look at this, rather than saying, okay, you can't afford to go to Yale, you have to go to community college. Or you might be able to get into some of these schools, but the financial aid, yeah, you might have a 4.1, but you don't have a 4.5 GPA, so you might not be able to get enough financial aid to make it viable for you. So yeah, that is a big tough spot there. Question in chat: is it possible that by 2024 some of the effects will begin fading as new students take on the new debt? Absolutely. By 2024, like I said, we're gonna have millions of people going into the system as we just continue this going, right? So it's incumbent upon the administration to provide answers on this, and look, they might not, and I think that's why we be grateful, be happy that we get something here. We get some form of action. We can show, and this is kind of important to talking about the Inflation Reduction Act as well. We can show that government can work for the people, can work for average middle class folks if we put enough pressure on, if we do the right things, if we take action, get in the streets. But that doesn't mean when we get the crust that we shouldn't keep fighting for the rest of the sandwich, right? So this is the eternal struggle of fighting for middle class and working class people in this country, and frankly across the globe. It's not just like there is no end point. That's the struggle of being working class. It's at any point you have to be able to get back up and keep fighting, and that's, it's scary to think about sometimes, but it's the truth. You got to keep getting back up. You got to keep fighting, and you just got to keep moving the needle. That's the way we're going to do it. It's just frankly incumbent upon us to keep going, keep fighting for it. Yeah, and Eric, you're right. The conservatives everywhere are telling us that the world is going to end, and I've seen plenty of arguments that people are like, well, you signed this contract, you did this, you did that. And it's like, well, first of all, at 17 years old, 18 years old, do you really I mean, I'm an accountant. I was good with numbers before I went into school. I don't fully know that I knew exactly how much debt I'd be coming out with. And I don't know exactly, like, okay, this is all of the costs that is going to accumulate. And I had the luck of having parents that helped pay for a good chunk of my school, and I still came out $30,000 in the hole. And I'm lucky. I had actually I unintentionally have my degree right here, but this piece of paper right here is almost $100,000. So it's like that's the type of thing where we have to evaluate on the whole. How do we fix this? It's like, I've heard other people say this, but it's basically just like saying, like, if you have a sickness and they come up with a vaccine, and let's not talk about COVID just because, oh my God. I don't want to have that debate, but if you came up with like a polio vaccine, it'd be like people that had died or had this disease prior that would say like, oh, well, you can't have that vaccine because I had to suffer from the sickness. It's like, no, fix the sickness, cure the disease so that future generations don't have to deal with it. That's the idea. That's the idea of most, I would argue, progressive ideals in across healthcare, wealth inequality, etc. But it's very apparent and very easy to see the monetary difference right here.